They put her in the wedding dress at gunpoint. Not with a real gun, Serena Vale was far too elegant for that. She used something sharper. She stood in the doorway of the storage room where Arya slept, dressed in silk and pearls, and said 4 words with the particular calmness of a woman who had never once doubted her own cruelty. "You will do this." Arya was 22 years old. She had not eaten a full meal in 4 days. She had been sleeping on a cot between boxes of estate wine and her father's old riding boots for 6 months. And yet, when she looked at her stepmother across that narrow, dusty room, something inside her did not break. It simply waited. "Lyra ran," Arya said. Her voice was flat, steady. Serena's jaw tightened just barely. "Lyra made a selfish, foolish choice. You will correct it." "You want me to marry a man who runs the Black Syndicate?" Arya stood slowly, her spine straight despite everything. "A man whose people are outside this house right now, Serena, armed." "Then you understand the alternative." Serena stepped inside, held out the wedding dress, ivory, obscenely expensive, still warm from where Lyra had ripped it off in a panic, and let it fall across Arya's arms like a surrender flag someone else was expected to carry. "You are nothing in this family. You have always been nothing. At least this way your nothing serves a purpose." Arya looked down at the dress. She thought about the ledgers she'd memorized, the offshore accounts, the paper trail she'd spent 3 months quietly building. She thought about the name Kang Jinhua, which she had first seen written in her father's private correspondence, underlined, circled, starred, as though even her father had understood that this man was not someone you simply owed money to. He was someone you feared, someone you respected, someone you did not cheat. Her father had cheated him anyway. And now here was the debt, heavy and white and draped across her arms. Arya put on the dress. She told herself it was survival. She almost believed it. But somewhere underneath that justification, quieter than a secret and sharper than a knife, was something she hadn't expected to feel: curiosity. She wanted to see him. The wedding hall was silent in the way that rooms full of armed men tend to be. Syndicate soldiers lined the walls in dark suits, still as pillars, watching everything and reacting to nothing. The officiant looked like he hadn't slept. Mr. Han, Kang Jinhua's strategist, a man with the kind of stillness that suggested he had already calculated every possible outcome of this room, and found all of them acceptable, stood to the side with his hands clasped, watching Arya walk down the aisle with an expression she couldn't quite read. And at the end of the aisle, in a wheelchair, sat Kang Jinhua. She had expected someone older, harder looking, someone whose face showed what he was, but he was younger than she'd imagined, perhaps 30, with sharp cheekbones and dark eyes that tracked her from the moment she appeared in the doorway. He sat completely still in the chair. His hands rested in his lap. He looked, to the untrained eye, like a man diminished by illness. Arya had spent 6 months studying people's eyes. She knew the difference between someone who couldn't move and someone who simply wasn't moving. She walked to him. She stopped. She looked at him directly, which clearly surprised him because something flickered in his expression, there and gone in less than a second. "You're not Lyra," he said. "No." "What's your name?" "Arya, the original daughter." She kept her chin level, the one they erased. Kang Jinhua was quiet for a long moment. Behind her, Serena made a small sound of impatience, a social cough meant to move things along. He didn't look at Serena. He kept looking at Arya, and something in his expression shifted, not warmly exactly, more like recognition. "Sign," Mr. Han said, and produced a contract seemingly from nowhere. Arya read every line. She was aware of the soldiers. She was aware of Serena behind her, radiating fury at the delay. She read the contract anyway because she had learned 6 months on a cot, eating leftover rice and reading financial documents by lamplight, that you never signed anything you hadn't read. She signed. And then Kang Jinhua stood up. He rose from the wheelchair the way a king rises from a throne, unhurried, deliberate, as though the chair had been a choice all along and not a limitation. He was tall. He straightened to his full height, and the room shifted around him, soldiers' postures snapping to something more alert, and Serena made a sound that was almost fear. Arya didn't step back, she watched him. "I knew you weren't Lyra before you walked through the door," he said quietly for her alone. "I knew before today, I've known for months." The hall was very still. "Then why?" she started. "Because I didn't come for a doll." His voice was low and even, each word placed with the precision of a man who never wasted them. "I came for the girl who survived hell." Behind her, Arya heard Serena inhale sharply. She didn't turn around. Kang Jinhwa studied her face. "You have a choice. I'll have you return to that house tonight if you want, back to the storage room, back to the leftovers and the silence and whatever slow death she had planned for you." He paused. "Or you come with me." "And do what?" Arya asked. "Learn," he said simply. "Rule." Arya thought about the dress she was wearing, Lyra's dress, Lyra's life, handed to her like an afterthought. She thought about her father's study, where she used to sit as a child before Serena had her locked out of every room that mattered. She thought about 6 months of hunger and cold and being treated like furniture, and how she had used every single one of those days to become more dangerous than any of them knew. "I choose power," she said, "not love." Something that was almost a smile crossed his face. "Good. Love is a liability." If you're already hooked on this story, smash that like button and subscribe. Arya's rise is only getting started, and you do not want to miss what comes next. Drop a comment and tell us, did you see that twist coming? The months that followed were an education in a language no finishing school taught. Arya learned how the Black Syndicate moved money across 12 countries. She learned how to read a room for threats before she'd finished crossing the threshold. She learned how to negotiate with men who had killed people for smaller slights, and she learned to do it without raising her voice, because Kang Jinhwa had taught her, not gently, that a raised voice was the first sign of someone who was losing. "You're angry," he said once, watching her across the desk in his study after a negotiation had nearly collapsed. "I'm fine," she said. "You're angry and you're hiding it." Which is better than most people, but hiding it isn't the same as using it. He stood and walked to the window. Anger is intelligence when you know how to spend it. Spend it wrong and it spends you. She hated how often he was right. She hated even more how often she found herself watching him. Not out of softness, she had burned that out of herself or tried to, but out of the same compulsion that had made her read those financial documents in the dark. He was a puzzle. He had built an empire by making himself feared, and he had made himself feared by being, underneath all of it, genuinely brilliant. He saw structures where other people saw chaos. He saw weaknesses where other people saw strength. He had looked at her in a storage room, erased and hungry and invisible, and seen something worth acquiring. She was not sure whether that was kindness or strategy. She suspected it was both, and that for him there was no meaningful difference. 4 months after the wedding, Serena came back. She came in the form of a headline, "Syndicate Bride Exposed, the Servant Who Played Princess." The story ran across 3 tabloids and a financial news outlet simultaneously, which told Arya everything she needed to know about how much it had cost Serena to plant it. There were photographs, Arya in the estate's servant quarters, Arya carrying laundry, Arya eating alone in the kitchen. There was a quote, anonymous, describing her as a fraud who conned her way into the syndicate through deception and desperation. Lyra had returned too. Ronan, her lover, the underground racer who had helped her escape, he had, it turned out, been feeding information to the syndicate for 2 years. Not to Kang Jinhwa, to a rival faction. When that faction collapsed, Ronan came back to Lyra with nothing, and Lyra came back to Serena, and Serena found her weapon and sharpened it and aimed it. The gala was Serena's chosen battlefield, a charity event for the city's wealthiest families, held in a building that had once been a courthouse, which Arya found appropriate. Serena arrived in red. Lyra arrived on her arm, polished and desperate, and performing confidence she didn't feel. The room was full of people who had once stepped over Arya at estate events, who had looked through her at functions she was not supposed to attend, who had eaten the same food she'd cooked and never wondered who made it. Arya arrived in black. Serena moved through the room like a general, whispering in ears, turning faces. By the time Arya crossed the room to get a drink, she could feel the shift, the slight withdrawal, the averted eyes, the practiced social coldness that Serena had been orchestrating for years. The murmur reached her in pieces. Servant. Fraud. Nobody. Serena appeared at her elbow with the serenity of a woman who believed she had already won. "You must be exhausted," she said sweetly, loud enough for the nearest cluster of guests to hear. "Maintaining a performance like this, pretending to be something you're not." "I've had practice," Arya said. "You trained me." Serena's smile didn't waver. "You were a charity case your father couldn't quite bring himself to discard. That's all you ever were. These people," a small gesture to the room, "they know that now. You can't buy a bloodline, darling." Arya set down her glass. "No," she agreed, "but you can buy a forensic accountant and a very good lawyer and 3 years' worth of your private correspondence." The smile finally moved, just slightly. "I've been busy," Arya continued, her voice still pleasant, still even. "While you were building this," she gestured to the gala, the room, the performance, "I was building something else. I know about the medication. The dosage your private doctor adjusted 2 months before my father's death. I know about the policy. I know about the account in Luxembourg that received a transfer 48 hours after the funeral." She paused. "I know everything, Serena. I've known for almost a year. I was just waiting for the right room." This was the right room. Kang Jinhua appeared at her side. She hadn't seen him cross the floor, but he was there, saying nothing, simply standing next to her in the way that he sometimes did when he wanted the room to understand the weight of his presence. The nearest guests had gone very still. The murmur had stopped. Serena's face was the color of old wax. "Lyra," Arya said, turning to her stepsister who had appeared at the edge of the circle, "stole 400,000 from the estate accounts over 18 months. Small withdrawals. Clever, actually, I almost missed it." She had not almost missed it. "Ronan Cross has been a syndicate informant for 2 years. He chose you because of your access to your mother's connections, not because of love. I'm sorry." She meant that part, she realized with some surprise. "I genuinely am." Lyra's face crumpled. "You're lying." "I'm not." Arya's voice was quiet, not cruel, just exact. "You can verify everything I've said. The evidence is already with 3 separate parties, legal, financial, and press, with instructions to release it tomorrow morning unless I contact them tonight." She looked at Serena. "Unless I see a reason to." The silence stretched. "Get out of my family's estate," Arya said. "Leave it cleanly, leave it completely, and never say my name in this city again. That's the offer. It won't be made twice." Serena left. She didn't say anything. She just turned in her red dress and walked toward the exit with the particular precision of someone maintaining dignity through sheer muscle memory. Lyra followed, and even through the devastation on her face, even through the mascara that was beginning to track, Arya felt something she hadn't expected, not triumph exactly. Something more complicated. Something that felt almost like grief. She pushed it down, later. There was always time for grief later. Kang Jinhua was watching her. When the room began to breathe again, when the murmur reignited around them and the gala stumbled back into motion, he leaned slightly toward her and said, "You had that ready for months." "Yes. You didn't use it until tonight." "I needed the audience." She picked up her drink again. "Destroying someone privately is personal. Destroying them publicly is a lesson." "Who were you teaching?" Arya looked around the room, the faces, the families, the inherited power and the purchased power and the performed power, all of it rearranging itself around her in real time, the way rooms do when they realize someone new has arrived in them, truly arrived, not as a guest but as a force. "Everyone," she said. He nodded once, the way he nodded when something confirmed a theory he'd held for a while. She found the rest of it 2 weeks later. She wasn't looking for it. She was working through the records of his early years, the period before the Syndicate had solidified around him. When he had been young and building something dangerous from nothing. And there it was, a note in his own handwriting dated from the same year her father's debt had first been recorded. Her name, not Lyra's, hers. The observation was clinical, intelligent, ruthless, exactly what she would have written herself if she had been in his position. He had identified her from a distance, from financial records and social patterns, as the one worth watching, the one who was enduring and learning and becoming quietly in the dark, exactly the kind of person he needed beside him. He had engineered all of it. Her father's debt called in at the precise moment that would force the marriage. The selection of Lyra calculated to make her run. The wheelchair, the performance of weakness, calculated to let Arya see him clearly before he revealed himself. Every move, a design, not a circumstance. She sat with it for a long time. She thought about what she had believed, that she had chosen power, that she had chosen this. And she understood now that choices are never as clean as they feel at the moment of making them. She had been maneuvered, expertly, thoughtfully, with what was she could see, intellectually, something that might even be respect in his language, which was the language of strategy and not sentiment. She had not escaped a cage. She had, with her own feet, walked into a larger one. The question was what she would do about it. She found him in his study. She set the note on the desk between them. He looked at it. He looked at her. He did not pretend to be surprised because he was constitutionally incapable of pretending to be something he was not, which was, she understood this, standing in that room, the most honest thing about him. "You chose me," she said. "Yes." "Before I had any choice." "Yes." "Why?" He was quiet for a moment, not evasive, considering. "Because you were becoming this," a gesture that encompassed her, all of her, in a storage room with no resources, no allies, nothing. He paused. People who become powerful because they were given power are fragile. People who build it from nothing in the dark against opposition. He stopped. "I have never met one who wasn't worth everything." Arya stood very still. "That doesn't make it right," she said. "No," he agreed, "it doesn't." She looked at him for a long time. She thought about the girl in the storage room, eating leftover rice, memorizing ledgers, building something out of silence and necessity. She thought about what she had become, walking through this world with the Syndicate's weight behind her name. She thought about whether any of it had been her choice, and whether that question even had a clean answer, and whether she was the kind of person who needed it to. She thought about what a cage was and what a throne was, and how sometimes in the hands of the right person, they were the same object. She picked up the note. She put it in her pocket. "We'll talk about what I'm owed," she said. "For the months I didn't know." And for the first time, Kang Jinhua laughed. It was brief and real, and she cataloged it the way she cataloged everything, carefully, precisely, filed under. Leverage. The Vale estate was hers by the end of the month. Serena was gone. Lyra was somewhere quieter, trying to rebuild something smaller and more honest. Ronan had disappeared in the way that Syndicate informants tended to when their usefulness expired. The rooms that had been locked to Arya for 6 years were open, every one of them. She walked them alone, late at night, learning her inheritance. And in a boardroom in the city's financial district, beside a man who had engineered her rise and underestimated slightly what she would do with it. Arya Vale sat down at the head of the table, set her hands flat on the surface, and looked at the men who had once looked through her. They thought they had sold her. They didn't know she had been buying the throne. If this story wrecked you, you know what to do. Like this video. Subscribe for everything that comes next and tell us in the comments. Was Kang Jinhua's plan brilliant, or was it a betrayal? Where do you stand? The debate is already happening down there, and Arya would want you to have an opinion.